The surprising love story of a mail-order bride and a cowboy who changed everything. Clara stepped off the rickety bus, her heart pounding as a cloud of dust enveloped her. The harsh sun bore down on her, exposing the weight of her dreams, tethered tightly to the suitcase she clung to with white-knuckled resolve. The barren streets of the struggling Montana town loomed ahead, and she felt the cold bite of isolation. She was an outsider here, an emblem of hope among hardened hearts, yet she was haunted by the shadows of a past she desperately wanted to escape. As her gaze swept Main Street, she took in the shuttered businesses that lined the road, and the wary glances tossed her way. Each look was a reminder of her status as a mail-order bride, a choice that both thrilled and terrified her. Was this really the love she sought, or merely another confining cage? Clara's stomach twisted as her thoughts spiraled. She could already feel the weight of expectation settling like a heavy blanket across her shoulders. What if she was wrong? What if this was just another mistake? "What's a pretty girl like you doing here?" came a voice that snagged her attention. It was a rugged figure atop a horse, Jake. He could feel the nervous energy radiating off her, and it unsettled him. He had his own burdens to bear, the looming foreclosure of his family's ranch gnawing at his insides. Yet in that moment, just there where their worlds collided, Clara represented something he had never allowed himself to crave: connection. But memories of his family's traditions flooded his mind, pressing against his chest, competing with an urge to protect the fragile creature standing before him. She was so different, so bold. Yet, standing in the dusty street, he recognized his need to keep things simple, to uphold the legacies of loyalty and hard work. Would he dare entertain thoughts of love if it meant jeopardizing everything he had? A whispered determination coursed through Clara as she caught Jake's eyes, feeling an unsettling mix of hope and despair flood her veins. "I'm here to find love," she dared to say, her voice trembling slightly. But self-doubt tickled the edges of her mind, clouding her vision of the future. What if this love, stripped of her past, but not quite unshackled, came with its own chains? As Clara grappled with the weight of her decisions, she felt the temperature rise, a metaphorical storm brewing just out of sight. She had come here to forge a new life, yet the predictable clutches of her past lurked too closely, each thought a fresh wound. "What if they don't accept me?" she whispered to herself as she struggled to envision a place for herself amidst the skepticism of the townsfolk. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Days turned into restless nights under the vast Montana sky, where Clara found herself laboring on the ranch alongside Jake. Their late-night conversations flickered to life like stars, small glimpses of the tenderness he could offer. Yet every shared laugh or fleeting touch felt heavy with unspoken tension. In the shadows of the barn, she often wrestled with her inner turmoil. She was more than just a bride from Ukraine. Could she be a partner worthy of Jake's love? The very heart she sought to protect quivered at the enormity of that question. But as old acquaintances from her past threatened to resurface, an icy chill slithered down her spine. The stakes sharpened, a sudden urgency gripping her. What if her past came crashing down, unearthing the fragile bond they had begun to form? Could she bear to confront the unraveling truth that loomed just beyond their grasp? Her thoughts darted wildly, breath hitching with every possibility. Her mind screamed that she needed to protect this burgeoning love. Clara was at a crossroads, the horizon darkening before her. The storm was only beginning. Would they weather it together or risk losing everything they had both fought so hard to achieve? The air thickened with unanswers as she stood at the precipice of her fears. All hope and despair tangled, leaving no certainty in its wake. Clara had worked tirelessly over the past 3 weeks, her hands calloused from hours of labor under the wide Montana sky. The rhythmic pounding of her heart echoed in her ears as dust danced through the beams of sunlight filtering into the barn. Each sunrise had offered fresh opportunities for growth. Yet instead of feeling empowered by her newfound strength, the storm brewing inside her intensified. The weight of her past came creeping back, insidious and haunting. Jake had grown accustomed to her presence. He watched her from a distance, marveling at the way she navigated the ranch, but he also sensed the turmoil within her. His heart tugged with both admiration and confusion. Other than the occasional shared smiles, he felt powerless to reach her. She was a wildflower in a field of thistles, radiant yet vulnerable amidst an overwhelming weight of expectation. One warm afternoon, while mending a rustic fence, Clara's mind drifted back to her life in Ukraine. The memories twisted in a painful dance. Friends and family had envisioned a different path for her, one that centered around stability, maybe even complacency, far from the tumult of her life now. She shook her head to dispel the thought. What were dreams anyway? Were they merely beautiful illusions, or a gateway to something profound? As Clara's thoughts spiraled, she was silently battling a question that loomed larger. What was love if it wasn't grounded in her own personal growth? Concern clouded Jake's brow as he approached her, the sun glinting off his hat. "You okay, Clara?" His voice resonated with sincerity, breaking through her haze of confusion. "Yeah, just thinking." She tried to shake off the introspection, but the uncertain timbre in her voice betrayed her. "About the farm? About us?" he pressed, curiosity flickering in his blue eyes. Clara exhaled sharply. Unknowingly, he had pulled her thoughts into direct confrontation. "About everything," she admitted, locking on to the steadiness of his gaze. "Can two broken souls really find peace together?" Jake paused, his rugged exterior softening. "Maybe we need to be broken first before we can find our way." His words hung in the air like a fragile thread binding their worlds. "But you've got to trust me, and yourself, Clara." She recoiled inwardly, the challenge igniting a flicker of defiance. After all, trust didn't come easy, and the question of her worth, shaped by years of pain, festered just beneath the surface. Did she have what it took to transform? That evening, as Clara stood outside gazing at the sunset, shades of crimson and gold igniting the horizon, she felt a rush of determination. With each passing day, she could see the glimmers of a life she wanted, one that merged independence with connection. She envisioned herself not merely as Jake's bride, but as his partner, someone who could contribute meaningfully to the struggles they both faced. Was she capable? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, yet the urge to confront her past pulled her closer to the precipice of change. The echo of her old friends' voices filled her head. "You must remember who you are, Clara." Those words haunted her. But the truth was, she had changed. No longer could she let her history define her. She needed to take charge. Clara resolved to face her fears head-on, a daunting task that felt terrifying but exhilarating. Maybe it was time to summon what remained of her shattered confidence and fight for a life she could claim as her own. But as sparks of courage ignited within, shadows lengthened across the land. She could hear whispers of her past calling her. Would she be brave enough to confront the truth that might threaten her budding future? Just then, the stillness of the night broke, carrying an unexpected message. The tumult was coming, and Clara stood suspended between what was and what might be. She was ready to embrace whatever came next. The next day dawned crisp and clear, the crispness in the air breathing new life into Clara.
She rose from sleep with a steely determination, her fists clenched against her side. There was no time to waste. If she was to redefine herself, she must act intentionally. She envisioned how she wanted to face Jake, how she would not hide behind uncertainty any longer.
Clara stepped onto the porch, inhaling the heady scent of the hayfields, and made her way to the chicken coop. The radiant sun stretched across the horizon, filling her with a sense of purpose. As she opened the coop, the cluck of the hens felt oddly reassuring, a reminder of her early days at the ranch, when each task had seemed monumental yet manageable. Her hands, once soft and unaccustomed to labor, now moved with confidence. With each egg she collected, Clara placed her doubts aside. Yet, as she worked, doubt lurked just beyond her focus. It taunted her, whispering destructive thoughts. What if she truly wasn't enough? What if her past engulfed her once again? A sharp panic gripped her, but she pushed it down, responding instead with meticulous calculations. She could only control what lay before her. Later that morning, while washing the breakfast dishes, Clara caught her reflection in the window. She took a moment to examine the woman she had become. She noticed the deeper lines on her face, the untamed spirit behind her eyes, and a flicker of resilience. Today she would talk to Jake about their future, no more sidestepping the truth. She could build a new foundation, but would he embrace the reality of who she was? Jake appeared in the yard, his presence a mix of reassurance and vulnerability. As he approached, Clara's heart quickened. "Hey," he offered, noting her cautious demeanor. "Jake," she said, steadying her breath, "can we talk?" "Sure," he replied, leaning against the fence. "What's on your mind?" His casual stance was comforting, yet Clara knew none of this would be easy. About us, about what kind of life we want to build. She felt the words build inside her, ready to spill over. Jake's expression became serious. "I've been thinking about us too, Clara. What needs to change?" "I don't want to hide anymore," she stated, her determination gaining strength. "I've spent too long letting my past dictate my decisions. I want to be a partner, passionate and strong, someone who challenges you rather than someone who clings on." He nodded but looked apprehensive. "You know that means you'll have to face things together, right? We have to tackle both our histories, however painful they might be." The reality of his words hit her like a thunderclap. "I do. I'm ready to confront my fears and start figuring out our path forward." Their eyes locked, and she saw in his the same flicker of vulnerability she felt. "But what if," he started, hesitating. "What if we fail?" she finished, her heart racing. "I feel that too, but hiding feels worse." Jake crossed his arms, taking a breath. "You know I care about you, but we have to be honest about what we bring to this fight." His words resonated within her, fueling an energetic spark. Yes, they would need to confront obstacles, mysteries inherent to both their lives. It would demand patience and understanding from them both. But maybe that was precisely what was required for the love they were trying to build. Just as Clara embraced this acknowledgement, a sudden gust whipped through, scattering leaves across the yard. It felt like a sign of the swirling changes ahead. "If it's scary, then it means we're on the right path," she added, emboldened by the challenge ahead. "Right," he agreed. His eyes became fierce and determined. "Let's discover what we're made of, then." As they stood side by side, a sense of readiness enveloped them, invigorating yet vulnerable, a leap into the unknown. Clara felt it beneath her skin. She was uncaging a piece of herself and letting the world see who she was, a force to be reckoned with. But deep down, as the winds picked up, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of something lurking in the shadows of her past, waiting for the right moment to pounce. What dark truth remained unaddressed? Would she unravel at the seams when Harry appeared, demanding answers she had yet to confront? The sun climbed higher, casting a warm glow that belied the uncertainty still pulsating through Clara's veins. As she and Jake parted ways to tackle their respective tasks around the ranch, Clara's mind swirled with a mixture of confidence and trepidation. She grabbed the reins of the horse she had neglected over the past weeks, a trusty mare named Ruby. The act felt like drawing on an old skill she had almost forgotten. She remembered the joy of riding, the way the wind raced past her, clearing her mind. Today, she decided, would be different. Today, she would not shy away from the ride or from the truths she needed to confront. As Clara mounted Ruby and started toward the fields, her heart raced, not from fear, but from a burgeoning excitement. The ride felt liberating, propelling her toward a moment she could sense was imminent. With each trot, she recalled her dreams of becoming more than just a woman defined by her past. She envisioned an empowered individual paving her own path. Yet, the moment she pushed the horse into a canter, a wave of doubt tinged the exhilaration. What if the past she had fought to bury sprang back to life, unearthing fears that had long been suppressed? Clara halted Ruby at the edge of a familiar trail, the one leading to a secluded grove of trees. This was a sacred place where she had found solace and clarity during her earlier struggles. Dismounting, she decided to sit beneath one of the towering trees. The roots sprawled into the earth like the past, complicated and intricate, yet grounded. What would Harry want from her now? What stories from their shared history could resurface to undermine the resolve she had so painstakingly built? Taking a deep breath, she pulled her journal from her bag, flipping through pages filled with thoughts, frustrations, hopes, and proclamations. She had often used it as a narrative device to work through her feelings. Today, however, she needed to confront the reality of those feelings, not evade them. As she began to write, Clara's mind wandered back to the night when she made the decision to leave everything behind, to escape the chain holding her to a life unsuited for her. Would embracing a partnership with Jake mean she would have to reckon with that part of herself, a time when she had felt completely powerless? In that moment, clarity washed over her. She could no longer be the girl too afraid to confront her past. It was essential to breathe life into that history instead of allowing it to suffocate her present. After a few minutes of reflection, she resolved to speak to Jake again. When he returned from his chores, she would not just voice her intentions, but the truth of her history, the shadows that lingered in the corners of her mind. She wouldn't let fear dictate this chapter of her life. Rather, she would acknowledge it and transform it into a strength that would fortify their future together. As she rode back to the ranch, Clara felt a new type of courage welling within her. She recognized that personal growth often came from the depths of discomfort and upheaval. There was a sense of urgency driving her now. The conversations that lay ahead could either build a bridge between her and Jake or expose the cracks driven by unspoken truths. Yet as she approached the yard, a shrill cry sliced through the afternoon air, cutting sharply against her renewed resolve. There stood Jake, his face pale and strained, eyes wide and unblinking. Clara felt the ground shift beneath her, an unsettling instinct urging her to brace for impact. "Jake!" she called out, her voice trembling with dread. What had happened? What awaited her on the other side of this moment? The shadows in her past might be reigniting, but perhaps they wouldn't be the only things that would resurface. Clara slid off Ruby, the sound of her hooves striking the ground echoing like the irregular beat of her heart. The tension in the air thickened, signaling a shift in her path. Every detail of Jake's posture, the way he stood with shoulders hunched and fists clenched, seemed to echo the emotional upheaval she felt lurking just beneath her surface. "Clara," he finally breathed out, his voice fragile yet burdened with urgency. The fear in his eyes stirred the deep-seated anxiety Clara thought she had shaken off. What had he learned? What had he discovered about her? Would this be a moment of revelation or catastrophe?
Before she could respond, Jake's gaze faltered, shifting to the ground as if the earth might fault back to provide the answers they both needed. She felt the weight of unvoiced truths pushing against her, threatening to unravel the resolve she'd just forged. "What is it, Jake?" she asked, trying to anchor herself to the present as her thoughts raced ahead into the unknown. "I found something," he stammered, barely glancing.
"In the barn. It's about your past." Clara's chest tightened. The very secrets she had worked so hard to bury were clawing their way back into the light. Abruptly, she realized this could not only unravel her future with Jake, but tear apart the fragile bond they had begun to build. But could she afford to let that fear dictate her response? "What did you find?" Clara's voice steadied, a calculated calm enveloping her anxiety. He clenched his jaw, the tension in the air crackling as he drew in a deep breath. "Your journals, your letters, they tell a story, Clara. A story about who you used to be. About Harry." He hesitated, struggling to form the words that would bridge the past and the present. A rush of emotions surged within her, betrayal, anger, and an overwhelming urge to embrace the girl who had fought so hard to escape. Yet, in that moment, she realized she had a choice to make. She could either shrink away, let the shadows consume her again, or stand firm and confront the reality of her past. She stepped toward him. "I know the girl in those letters, Jake. She's a part of me, one I am no longer ashamed of. But you need to understand, confronting that girl is what brought me here, to this moment with you." Jake blinked, confusion etched across his face. "And you think this will be enough? Can you just move on?" "I don't have to move on. I need to incorporate her into who I am now. I'm not asking you to accept everything. I'm asking for a chance to explain, to show you how far I've come." The words fell out like raindrops breaking the stillness, refusing to hide behind veils of uncertainty. Jake finally met her gaze, and she could see the wheels turning in his mind. They both stood at a precipice, balancing on the edge of something powerful yet terrifying. "Are you ready to share your story?" he asked, a note of cautious hope lingering in his tone. "Yes," Clara replied, resolute. "It's time." She could feel the pulse of change growing louder, the boundaries of her past merging with her aspirations. As they moved toward the barn, a familiar anxious flutter began to rise in her chest. She had written her truth, but now she would have to live it. With every step, she prepared to peel back the layers she spent years building. It would take more than resolve. It would take vulnerability and strength. As they approached the threshold, Clara could almost sense the ghosts of her past, watching, waiting for this unveiling. The air was thick with anticipation, the walls of the barn closing in around them. Would Jake's acceptance forge a path toward mutual understanding, or would it unleash the darkness she feared? The moment of reckoning lay ahead, heavy with the weight of truth. What stories would surface once she began to reveal her heart? Clara took a deep breath, preparing for a transformation that might change everything. Clara paused at the barn door, the familiar creak of the old wood announcing their entrance into the sanctuary that housed her past. The smell of hay and dust intertwined with the warmth of the day, creating a cocoon that felt both inviting and suffocating. Jake stepped beside her, uncertainty written all over his face. The sunlight streamed in behind them, casting elongated shadows that danced across the rough floor. For a fleeting moment, Clara wished she could retreat into that light, escape the gravity of the moment that anchored her to this place. "What do you want to know?" she asked, her voice wavering slightly as she summoned the courage she'd been cultivating for years.
His brow furrowed, eyes darting to her like he was trying to comprehend the vastness of her uncharted history. "Everything," he finally said, the word heavy with unfulfilled expectation. "I need to understand who you are, who you were." Clara drew a breath, the lump in her throat swelling as she thought of the letters strewn across the barn. Fragments of her life, each page a testament to pain and resilience. They were not just stories, they were pieces of her soul. "Promising myself I wouldn't live in the past again," she began, her voice thickening with raw emotion. "Each journal entry reflects the struggle I faced with Harry. He was," she faltered, the memories straining against her will to move forward. "He was my prison." As she spoke, Jake nodded slowly, processing her words as if they were foreign language translating into a new understanding. "But you survived him," he interjected, the conviction in his tone offering her a lifeline. "Yes," Clara replied, the heat in her chest surging toward a quiet power. "And in surviving, I discovered who I could become, who I am. Those letters are my reconciliation with my past, Jake." He stepped closer, the distance between them narrowing as the air thickened with familiarity. "You've come so far, Clara. I see strength. I see courage. But what's the part you haven't revealed yet? What scares you?" Her breath caught, and the rawness of his question pierced the layers she had just peeled away. Could she reveal the truth behind her fear? The whispers that told her she wouldn't be enough? "It's not about the past, Jake," she admitted, looking deep into his earnest eyes, strands of vulnerability weaving through her resolve. "It's about connection." Shadows danced around them as she shared her fear of intimacy, of fully revealing herself to him. "What if this is all an illusion? What if you only want to love the versions of me from these pages? I can't promise you the girl you wrote to in those letters. I'm still figuring out who I want to become, with or without you." Silence stretched, but it was not a void. It was a moment of shared understanding, a bridge forming between what was and what could be.
Jake stepped back, his expression contemplative. "So, we build from here?" Clara felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. The thought of creating a new narrative together was both exhilarating and terrifying. In that heartbeat, she realized she had already begun the most challenging part of this journey, opening up. As they began to walk farther into the barn, the shadows shifted again, illuminating paths not just for her past, but for possibilities ahead. Clara's heart raced with renewed purpose. She wanted to forge a fresh story where she could take the lessons of her past without being bound by them. But as she caught sight of her journal stacked atop the hay bales, a chill raced down her spine. What else was waiting for her to uncover? What truths lingered beyond those pages that she still hadn't confronted? They paused in front of the first journal, and she felt its weight as if it could spill all her secrets at once. "Are you ready?" Jake urged, glancing at her with a mixture of support and trepidation. Clara hesitated, the tension between her desire to move forward and the fear of what lay ahead palpable in the air. "Not just yet," she said, her resolve hardening. "I need to confront it all before we can write our story." With that, the quest for clarity had officially begun, a journey deeper than she had anticipated. And the next words she would utter could either illuminate their path forward or plunge them into uncertainty. What emotional revelations awaited within those journals, and how would they reshape everything she thought she knew? Clara's heart thrummed in her chest as she deliberated her next course of action. The journals stared back at her, their spines lined up like soldiers, each one a promise and a threat rolled into one.
They would expose her secrets, the vulnerable stories she had neatly categorized in her mind, but which remained chaotic and turbulent in her heart. "Do you think we could read one together?" Jake's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts, a suggestion gentle yet relentless. She shook her head, a sudden wave of panic cresting within her. Could she share something that deep? The thought made her skin feel electric, as if the very act of opening one of those journals would ignite a revelation she wasn't ready to face. "No, it's too much," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper, filled with an urgency that sounded as foreign to her as the words felt. What would he think? Would he still see her strength, or simply her fragility when exposed? Jake stepped forward, his figure outlined by the fading light. "There's no rush, Clara, but avoiding it won't help either. I'm here for you, whatever that means." His unwavering stance pushed Clara to confront the reality of her fear. She was at a crossroads, defined not just by her past, but also by what she was willing to embrace in the future.
Every fiber in her being screamed to leap forward, while the shadows of her previous life behind her clutched desperately at her ankles. "It's vulnerable," she replied, a sigh escaping her lips. "Opening these journals feels like removing bandages from wounds that aren't fully healed." Jake took a moment to absorb her words. "There's a difference between being vulnerable and being damaged. You survived, Clara. You're not defined by those wounds. You can control how much you share and when." Her eyes fixed on his, she considered the enormity of what he was suggesting. Trust was a delicate construct, finely woven with threads of truth and risk. She reconvened the pieces of her resolve, feeling the weight of her choice. "Maybe I'm afraid of how I could lose control if I share too much too quickly. What if I unravel?" "I see it differently," Jake countered, the depth of his gaze unwavering. "Every time you choose to reveal a piece of yourself, you're actually taking control. It's an act of empowerment, showing that you can piece those fragments together. You get to decide how they fit." Each word sank deeper into her consciousness, puncturing the fog of indecision that clouded her mind. Perhaps there was strength in confronting those pages, in exploring the fragments out loud instead of alone. With a newfound determination, she nodded slowly. "Let's start with something small," she decided. Inside the barn, the air remained thick with promises and fears. When she reached for the first journal, its weight felt less daunting. She cradled it in her hands as if it contained an entire universe of possibilities. "Which one is this?" Jake asked gently, peering over her shoulder as she opened it. Clara paused, glancing critically at the neat handwriting that sketched out her thoughts from 2 years ago. "It's from the summer after everything ended with Harry." Jake tilted his head, curiosity lighting his eyes. "Then it's a significant moment, a turning point." "Or a catastrophic failure," she offered, pride and apprehension battling for dominance. "Then let's see it as a beginning, not an end," he encouraged, shielding her from the implication of despair with his unwavering belief in her strength. Swallowing hard, Clara scanned the first few lines, which painted both the suffocation of her past and the flickers of hope trying to break through. These words had been her lifelines, her reckoning with herself in the most desperate moments. "I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders, yet each day provides a sliver of light, a reminder that I am still alive." With those words, she felt the tether of her previous self loosening ever so slightly. Each letter she read became a bridge to the woman she wanted to become. What would she discover in this process of unearthing her raw experiences? What further revelations were buried within the pages yet to be read? In that moment, she understood. This journey was not just about recovery, it was about rebirth.
The sun dipped lower, heavy with the day's remnants. Clara felt the threshold of her reality shifting. There was more to explore, and, importantly, more to understand about herself.
What lies ahead in these pages could change everything, she concluded to herself, the weight of her past no longer feeling like a cage, but rather like pieces of armor. And as Jake watched her read, curiosity mingled with something deeper. Something unspoken began to settle between them, a shared future that awaited their discovery. She could feel it brewing, an uncharted potential ready to redefine both their lives. But suddenly, a profound realization hit her. What other truths about herself had she too long avoided? If Clara could confront these writings, what else was waiting to be revealed that could ultimately shape her future? Clara's fingers hesitated at the page, as if an invisible force was holding her back from unearthing the words that lay beneath. Each letter she traced pulled her deeper into a world she had hoped to escape, revealing not just memories, but the very fabric of who she had been. The summer after Harry had left had not only been a moment of profound loss, it had marked the beginning of her real awakening. "What do you think she felt?" Jake's voice broke through her reverie, drawing her back to the present. Clara swallowed, her heart racing, not with fear, but anticipation. "I think she felt lost, wandering without a map." The admission dripped with vulnerability, yet it felt liberating to express, like releasing air from a balloon too tightly wound. "But she also found light, or at least glimpses of it," Jake added, expressing a keen understanding that surprised Clara. "Yes," she agreed, looking forward. "She discovered small joys, a morning coffee, the laughter of friends, the sound of her own voice. Each experience was like a breadcrumb leading her out of the darkness." Realizing the journal was more than a record of her past, Clara recognized it as a chronicle of resilience. She was not who she was in that moment when she penned those words. She was a survivor who had faced the tumult of betrayal and emerged with wisdom. What if that version of herself could guide her? Inspired, Clara turned the pages, scanning through the familiar verses that chronicled her journey from heartache to healing. She found herself captivated by her own candor, the childlike honesty that had come so naturally to her back then. "I've got to face this fear," she murmured more to herself than to Jake. Along with each reflection, she felt fragments of her self-worth being restitched. Jake watched intently, his presence a solid backing she had lacked for so long. "You can face it," he reassured, "but clarity only comes when you are honest with yourself. Whatever you're scared of, it's going to carry less weight once you share it." Clara nodded, ignited by the challenge. "Okay, I'll read this one," she cleared her throat. "Today, I caught sight of
myself in the mirror, and for the first time, I didn't turn away. I am beginning to understand that my worth is not tethered to someone else's approval." As she spoke, the words felt like a mantle being placed over her shoulders, lifting her weight and empowering her spirit. She could recall how writing had served as a mirror, reflecting aspects of herself that she had deliberately avoided. It hadn't just documented her pain, it had sparked change. "Clara," Jake urged, "you're not just reliving your past, you're reclaiming it. What is one thing you've learned about yourself that you didn't know before?" His question landed like a spark in her thoughts, igniting something deeper. "That I'm stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. It's easy to see strength in others, but I didn't allow myself to accept my own." Jake nodded knowingly, the flicker of admiration in his gaze igniting a warmth inside her that she hadn't expected. With an encouraging smile, he prompted, "Then keep going. This moment can't be the end." An electrifying thrill ran through Clara, propelling her to be more daring. She flipped further through her journal, seeking entries that spoke to her core. Here's another. "Every day I wake up with echoes of yesterday, but also the promise that I can rewrite my story." "Look at you," Jake remarked, his admiration palpable. "You've seen what's possible for yourself. What if this is just the beginning of a new chapter?" The gravity of those words resonated deeply. Clara felt the urge to explore every buried emotion, to confront all that she had sidelined for so long. Perhaps there were even greater revelations waiting for her. Hidden capabilities, talents that hadn't been tapped into, or patterns she'd never recognized until now. What if I stepped beyond this journal and shared my journey further? She wondered aloud, excitement tinged with apprehension. Jake's eyes sparkled at the notion. That would be the ultimate act of empowerment. You'd not only inspire yourself, but possibly countless others who've struggled through similar shadows. Courage wove its way through Clara's veins, an unfolding realization that her voice could crash through the silent walls she had built. But what if I fail? A small tremor of doubt laced her words. The only failure is not trying, he responded softly, his unwavering confidence wrapping around her like a warm blanket. And failing does not diminish your value. It just teaches you. As the sun kissed the horizon, Clara felt a rush of exhilaration rise within her. Each page she had uncovered drew her closer to a version of herself she was proud to claim. The past no longer felt like an anchor, but a stepping stone toward a boundless future. What new understanding awaited her as she stepped outside her comfort zone? Clara peered into the sunset, determination igniting a question burning in her heart. Was it time to seek her true passion beyond the pages, embracing the life she had always wanted? The moment of truth lingered just on the edge of consciousness, daring her to leap forward into the unknown. The first light of dawn seeped through Clara's window, peeling away the remnants of night. She woke with a restless energy, the weight of possibility pressing on her chest. The journal lay open on her desk, a silent invitation to plunge deeper into her journey. Today felt pivotal, she could sense it in her bones. What had once appeared like a mundane cycle of living now shimmered with the potential for transformation. The vibrant colors of her new insight ignited a nerve she hadn't tapped before. She wasn't merely a participant in her life, she was the author, ready to script a new narrative. But where would this new path lead? The thought unsettled her, enticing yet fraught with uncertainty. Clara grasped a pen and flipped to an empty page. This time, she wouldn't just write about feelings, she would draft a plan rooted in ambition. What ignites my spirit? She pondered aloud, scanning her surroundings. The untouched canvases in the corner beckoned, their surfaces white and promising. Art had always been a comfort, a vehicle for expression when words failed her. Yet she had relegated it to hobbies instead of acknowledging it as a potential career path. What if I created something to share? The idea blossomed, clamoring for attention. She could start a blog, intertwining her past narratives with personal reflections on courage and creativity. What had she learned about healing that might resonate with others? Torn between excitement and fear, she knew not all stories were pretty, but they were real. Jake's voice echoed in her mind, encouraging her to push through the doubt. Slowly she wrote, "Today I reclaim my passion for art, not just for myself, but to inspire others." The words spilled onto the page, fueling her determination. Stepping outside, she found herself enveloped in the fresh air, invigorated by the scent of newfound potential. The world buzzed around her in a flurry of activity as joggers raced by and birds chirped animatedly. She glanced at her neighbor's fence, freshly painted, and an idea sparked. Maybe I could create something within my own community, she mused. Clara's thoughts whirled with the notion of community art projects, work celebrating her surroundings and the people within them. Could she invite others to join her, pooling together stories, histories, and creativity? Hell, the mere thought of collaborating with others sent a thrill up her spine. Let's not just stop at personal experience, she decided. The thought was intoxicating, generating a ripple of excitement as she envisioned the vibrant paintings, anecdotes, and joint ventures that could develop. This was more than self-healing. It was about building connections, reclaiming space that had been lost in shadows.
Yet, lurking beneath her enthusiasm, rested a question that twisted her stomach into knots. What if people reject her? What if her work, her vulnerability, fell flat? The fear rose like a tide, threatening to pull her back under. But
"The only failure is not trying," echoed in her mind. "The only failure is not trying," followed swiftly by Jake's gentle challenge to be honest with herself. The work wouldn't be perfect, nor would everyone understand her. Still, it would be hers. In that moment of clarity, Clara chose resilience over fear. She pictured herself organizing a local art gathering, a warm space where stories would intertwine with creativity, devoid of the expectations that had once shackled her. Yet, as she turned back towards her home, something tugged at her heart, a reservation she couldn't shake. Would she actually follow through, or merely dream? The days ahead seemed to stretch out like the vast, uncertain expanse of uncharted territory. The challenge would test her resolve, demanding every ounce of courage she had mustered thus far. Clara knew that stepping into this new endeavor required not only embracing her past, but evolving beyond it. As she scribbled the first lines of her artistic vision into her journal, a swarm of anticipation buzzed around her, almost as if the universe was conspiring in her favor. But a nagging voice reminded her of the inevitable pushback that often accompanied dreams, disbelief from others. In that moment, she recognized she needed to confront the doubt head-on. It was time to face the criticisms she feared, to rise beyond the shackles of opinions she had allowed to shape her. Little did she know that as she stepped into the light, even greater revelations awaited just out of reach. Would she harness the courage to pursue this calling? The question loomed in the air, inviting her towards an intersection of identity and aspiration. What discovery awaited her beyond the next stroke of the brush, or perhaps even at the climax of her creative gathering? The adventure awaited, daring her to leap into the unknown once more. The weeks unfolded with fervor, each day a testament to Clara's journey of transformation. She diligently mapped out her plans, a community art project showcasing shared stories through visual mediums, intertwining past with progress. Clara had initiated meetings with local artists, bringing together an eclectic group united by a mutual commitment to creativity and vulnerability. As Clara stood in the hall of the community center, her heart raced with anticipation, while the walls pulsed with potential. Paintings hung in clusters, their vibrant colors echoing the stories that lay beneath each brushstroke. It wasn't just about the art, it was about healing through shared experiences. She had effectively woven together contributions that illuminated not just her personal journey, but also those of others. Each participant breathed life into the narratives painted on the canvases. During the inaugural gathering, visitors trickled through the door, and Clara felt the palpable energy of curiosity and hope. Individuals mingled, exchanging laughter and relationships, each voice adding richness to the already vibrant atmosphere. "What inspired you to take this leap?" one participant asked, eyes wide with admiration and curiosity. Clara felt a flood of emotion rush through her as she
It was an understanding that our stories, each wound and struggle, could connect us and ultimately heal, she replied sincerely, her confidence solidifying with each passing moment. I didn't want to face my past alone anymore. The validation she received in return, the smiles and encouragement from fellow artists, stoked the fire of her conviction. She was contributing to something larger than herself, a community of individuals striving to share their histories and embrace their truths. As the month wore on, Clara experienced tangible progress, not just in her aspirations, but within herself, breathing fresh life into the haunting remnants of her past selves. Resilience replaced the weight of hidden insecurities. She had confronted her fears, standing fortified in her truth, and extended that strength to those around her. Each passing day solidified her newfound identity, a woman who could lead, listen, and inspire. One crisp afternoon, Jake arrived at the community center, a bundle of floral arrangements in his arms. His proud smile illuminated the room as he sauntered alongside her at the exhibition. "You've created a haven here, Clara," he exclaimed, sincerity glistening in his tone, and it ignited a profound sense of pride within her. "Together we've created something," Clara corrected gently, understanding that strength lay in collaboration. They stood, hand in hand, absorbing the hushed awe of their community as visitors shared their interpretations and cherished the raw honesty displayed on the walls. Clara felt their palpable resonance. This was a space crafted through love, courage, and a commitment to uncovering deepest truths. But as Clara observed the gathering, another realization washed over her. She was not just shaped by her struggle, she was defined by her evolution. The individual she had become transcended the constraints that had once limited her. She had grown into a trusted facilitator, an advocate of creativity, and a beacon for those yearning to strive for their own transformations. That evening, a small figure approached her, an aspiring artist who had been moved by her journey. "Clara," the girl said hesitantly, "how do you do it? How do you stay brave?" Clara knelt down to meet her gaze. "Bravery's not about being perfect. It's about acknowledging the parts of yourself you want to improve. And sometimes taking a leap into the dark is the only way to uncover the light again." In that moment, Clara recognized the depth of her own growth. Here she was, guiding others through their fear, empowered by the strength she had cultivated within herself. She had emerged into a confident woman, fully aware of her capabilities and the mark she could make in the world. As the event drew to a close, Clara allowed herself a moment to visibly reflect on her journey. She felt accomplished with every brushstroke on those canvases. Even in the hustle of running the exhibition, she had managed to elevate her passion into action. Jake stepped closer, and they shared a knowing glance, a connection fortified through vulnerability and authenticity.
"You've built more than art, Clara. You've kindled hope," he said softly, his approval warming her heart. The next morning she awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. While the winds outside whispered stories of new beginnings, Clara understood that she had reached a formidable turning point. This was not merely the end of an endeavor, but the catalyst propelling her forward. As her fingers grazed the journals she had pored over, she smiled, knowing she could use her voice to connect with many more. Clara could launch her own blog, guiding others through the turbulent sheets of their narratives and illuminating paths back to their truths. The journey would continue, unveiling more layers, more colors, as she explored the artistic tapestry of her experience. Clara had not only reclaimed her voice, but she had emerged as a trailblazer in her community, a woman filled with ambition, compassion, and purpose. Standing at the precipice of yet another new chapter, she felt the excitement ripple through her as she prepared to embrace the next raw canvas awaiting her touch. It was time to write anew. It was time to persist in her journey toward fulfillment. Now, as you reflect on this transformative tale, it's crucial to embrace your own growth. Clara's journey is an inspiration to us all. Don't wait. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you won't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that could ignite your path to personal achievement. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. The stories depend on your support. Comment your reactions and theories about Clara's growth and the impact of vulnerability. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to spread the word, because only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of uplifting voices that encourage transformation.